27, 2016. I am Khaja Ashraf. Today I am going to introduce you to a book written by Dr. Syed Akhtar Ehtesham. I have picked up this book for today's talk because I think this book is a valuable addition in political philosophy which sums up humans' historical thought process in this volume such wonderfully and in amazing way that once you will read it, you will really think that you have seen human political thought process evolving from antiquity to the today's modern world. How Dr. Ehtesham has done this amazing work is amazing in itself. I have been reading the parts of this book when he was writing it and putting on various forums for feedback. I also participated sometimes in giving my feedback about the parts of this book which uh, eventually take shape of this book, which is titled God, Government and Globalization. So there are three G's in it: God, Government and Globalization. And I would like to add the fourth G in it, and that is the G of great. That this is a great work, and we must thank Dr. Ehtesham, whom we call with love Dr. E, that he has compiled, written this book for us. All the people who are interested in development of political thought over thousands of years, they will find this book very valuable for them. Having said that, let us talk about this book, God, Government, and Globalization. And I think the wonderful thing about this book, we can start from the dedication, that how the idea of this book was developed, and how Dr. E continued thinking on these lines, which eventually turned out in this volume. So he makes this dedication to one of his uncles. He writes, "I dedicate this book to my uncle, late Sayyid Badrul Hassan Warsi, my mentor in progressive thought and enlightenment. He was a great, though unacknowledged and unassuming intellectual." So his mentor was his uncle, and I think he has done justice, and it's a great tribute to his late uncle, who motivated him to go through all this intellectual process and eventually present this gift to us. And after this dedication, the book starts with the bio of Dr. E. Dr. E was born in India in 1939, and he attended his elementary school and high school India, and then he migrated with his family to Pakistan in 1951, and he attended college, university, and medical college in Pakistan, and then he migrated to UK in 1976 for his postgraduate studies. And although he is a medical doctor, but he is a very solid political thinker who really understand the politics, world politics. I won't say just India, Pakistani politics, the world politics in depth. And uh, uh, the way he has uh, jot down his thoughts about the international politics is also amazing. And from uh, Britain, he migrated to the United States in the 80s, and ever since he is living in New York and New York State, and he worked there as a medical doctor. And on the side, he continued his his political writings, and he is very active. He actively participates in the various intellectual discourses on various available forums in the United States and in the international arena. So, in the section of God, from where all politics starts, according to Dr. E, he has there are 12 chapters with the deal with God. The first chapter tells us steps in human evolution, and then second chapter deals with the theories of the origin of religion, very important. And third chapter is the origin of religion in mythology, and fourth chapter deals with the creation stories. You know, creation stories, Judeo-Christian and Muslim traditions have its own creation stories. They are similar to each other, and he extensively discusses them. And not only he writes about Judeo-Christian and Muslim creation theories in this chapter. He discusses the other creation theories as well. And then the most interesting chapter in this book I find is uh, thesis of the origin of God, that how the idea of God was evolved. And then uh, he talks about fundamentalism, which is a kind of sort of modern and not so modern in last few centuries phenomenon. So it really gives a real insight into this issue of fundamentalism. And then next chapter is genesis of right-wing Islamic activism. So this chapter is interesting and fascinating for Muslim scholars who really want to understand the nature of right-wing activism in Islam, and those forces who outside Islam who are trying to understand this phenomenon. They will find it very interesting. And then in this section, uh, there is another fascinating chapter which deals with the impact of religion on mental health. Wow, mental health and how religion impacts it. You know, that this is also a fascinating chapter. And then the concluding chapter in this section is religion is not rational. So that is a fascinating dimension of religious consciousness, and as we know, that the many people, particularly who have thinking brains, try to find rationality in religion. But Dr. E has very interesting views which he has written in this chapter, in this section of his book, God, Government and Globalization. Once we finish this section in the book, which deals with God and the streaks of the idea of God impacting the human being's thought process, then he moves on it to next section, the section which deals with the government. So this section also has 9 chapters in it, and first he defines what a government is, and of course government is a modern concept, and Dr. E uh, provides its definitions, that how uh, one should understand what government is. And then the second chapter is theories of government. So then he deals with the various theories of government, all modern theories about the government comes under Dr. E's scrutiny. And then he moves on to third chapter, Britain as a case study of development of capitalism. So we know the last century, which we call 20th century, was sort of a century of political polemics, and two major polemics were communism and capitalism. So he uh, discusses capitalism in UK's history, and it is a fascinating subject in which you really get insight in the psyche and development of capitalism. And amazingly, next chapter, which is the fourth chapter in this section, and deals with democracy, and he says democracy is basically a function of capitalism. Very interesting idea. I have my own views on this issue, which I'm not going to discuss here because I am discussing Dr. E's book. And next chapter in this volume is democracy in the USA. So he talks about United States democracy as well, and presents a wonderful analysis, another interesting uh, case study to understand the nature of democracy. And then sixth chapter deals with a glance at the history of colonialism. Colonialism also has been very interesting subject for the all left-leaning intellectuals across the globe, and Dr. E has wonderful ideas and insights uh, about the history of colonialism. And this chapter, I recommend that anybody who want to straighten up his brain about the modern world and the nature of colonization. He should read this chapter. And going through all this, he ends this section with the idea of empire and finally the rest of the USA. So see how he defines government and capitalism and colonialism and the idea of empire and then the state of the United States in this perspective. So in another fascinating section in the book. Last section of the book deals with the globalization. Oh wow, globalization, very interesting phenomenon. Intellectuals all over the world are trying to understand the nitty-gritty of globalization. What is globalization? How is it functioning? How is it impacting the common folks around the globe? A very fascinating study. And Dr. E has undertaken it and researched it real well. And on this issue, he has 17 chapters, and each chapters deals with the issues of globalization in quite depth. So once you will read this book, you will really know the illusions and delusions of globalization and the apparent face and the hidden face of globalization. So with all this, I recommend that anybody who is interested in the development of thought process of international politics from the days of antiquity to the days of modernity must read this book. Now the question is where you can get this book from. Well, Amazon is the key for all our demands or all our needs. Just log on to www.amazon.com and put Dr. E's name or put God, government, and globalization, and the book will pop up. And this wonderful book, Amazon is selling only for $3. So it's an amazing bargain. I suggest that everybody should read this book. Even someone who is not interested in political thought process or the development of political thought process must read this book at least to have the grip on the issues which arise in day-to-day political affairs around the globe. And with this, I thank you, everybody, for listening to me.